Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the First Draft podcast. Thank you so much for listening to episode 1. I really appreciate all of the amazing feedback that we've gotten so far. Before I start this episode, I kind of wanted to give a little bit of a trigger warning. We are going to be talking about sexual assault and sexual abuse in this episode. And before we get started, I wanted to give you a few resources that you can contact if you're dealing with any of the trauma that we may be speaking about today, or even if you're not and you just need somebody to talk to. So the National Sexual Assault Hotline, their phone number is 1-800-656-4673, and they're open 24 hours, and they're willing to speak to you and wanting to speak to you. So if you need that, that's there for you. And then anyone in the military, there's also the DoD Safe Helpline. That's an online helpline. They have a phone number as well, which is 877-995-5247. Or you can also go onto their website and chat directly with them. It's a closed network, it's very secure. So those are some resources in case you need them. I encourage you to go into this episode with an open mind and an open heart and try and just learn a little bit and listen to the stories of those around you and do what you can to help those around you and yourself. So thank you for listening. For those of you who don't know, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and I am one of the very few, very lucky people who can say that they have not had that experience. But a lot of people don't get to do that. A lot of people don't get to live their life knowing that nobody has ever violated their body. Nobody has ever gotten into their space and taken control of something that didn't belong to them. I'm very lucky to be able to say that I am one of 3% of women who hasn't been sexually assaulted. Yeah, 3%. That means 97% of women get sexually assaulted in their lifetime. And that's not just random people that you may not know. That's people that you pass by in the grocery store, people that you sit next to in class, your friends, your family, could even be you. And that's really ridiculous. I'm usually a person of a lot of words, who has a lot of opinions, who's able to articulate their thoughts really eloquently, but this is one of those topics that makes me stop and really just think. Because I don't understand. I don't understand why there are people in the world who think they have the right to get into someone else's space and violate them that way. I don't get why there are people who think it's okay, or why people think that blaming victims for the way that they cope or the way that they react or the way that they go about trying to live their life after their experiences. I don't get why people judge any person who's been sexually assaulted. And I say person because I'm not just talking about women. I'm talking about men. I'm talking about non-binary people. I'm talking about every single person who was just trying to go about their day and somebody else took it upon themselves to hurt them for no reason. And I really don't know what I can do personally to try and create change except start the conversation. A lot of people get so uncomfortable whenever we mention topics like this, but I'm a firm believer that if you're not uncomfortable every so often, then you're not learning. Whether or not these things make it hard for you to listen, you have to listen. You have to hear the stories. You have to be willing to learn, because if you don't know, if you don't learn, if you're not exposed to what's going on, you're not going to be able to create change. You're not going to be able to start the conversation with someone else. I think the worst part about these situations sometimes is that people get scared. They get scared of opening up. They get scared of telling their story because they're scared of not being believed. I just kind of want to put it out there that If anyone has ever told you that they don't believe you, if anyone has ever told you that it was your fault, if anyone has ever told you that it was because of what you were wearing or who you were with or how much you drank or where you were, those people are dead wrong. It doesn't matter where you were. It doesn't matter who you were with. It doesn't matter what you ate or what you drank or what you wore. Nobody has the right to put their hands on you or get in your space or make you feel uncomfortable. And I believe you. I believe your story. I believe that you have every right to deal with what you went through in whatever way you see fit. And I believe that there shouldn't be any reason why people who commit these crimes should be allowed to walk free. I don't remember how many years ago this was, but there was a case of some college kid who raped a girl behind like a club or something. And a few other guys were walking behind the club and they managed to see him and stop him. And when they went to trial, his father stood on the stand and said that a 10-second mistake shouldn't ruin the rest of his life. Think about that. A 10-second mistake shouldn't ruin the rest of his life. Excuse my language here, but that is a load of shit. That wasn't a 10-second mistake. That was a 10-second choice that he made to ruin someone else's life. And the fact that people can so easily let others off the hook for deciding to make these horrifying decisions is ridiculous. And I'm so proud to be part of a generation who is doing everything that they can to create change, doing everything they can to expose the people who not only commit these acts, but the people who stand by and let them happen. Like I said, there's not a lot I feel like I can do personally. You know, I'm not a public figure. I'm not somebody who has a crap ton of money who can fund organizations, but I can start the conversation and I can do my best to listen to your stories and the stories of the people around me and spread awareness. And one of the main things that I wanted to mention is that if you are somebody who has been sexually assaulted, and if you need help, and if you need somebody to talk to, there are resources out there for you. One of the ones that I wanted to mention is the National Sexual Assault Hotline. They're open 24 hours a day. Their number is 1-800-656-4673. And they're there to listen. They're there to help. And if it feels like that's not enough, if it feels like that's not personal enough for you, I'm here to say that I'm here to listen. I would be honored if you wanted to trust me with your story, with whatever it is that you've gone through, with whatever it is you're feeling. It's really sad that these are things that we experience as a society and that these are things that people have to go through. But I think talking about it really helps. There's a lot of different things that people do to cope and to deal with what they've been through. You know, I remember some of my closest friends when I was in high school, they were sexually assaulted and they went through these really interesting phases. And I remember being there trying to help them through it. And throughout all of what they were going through, the biggest thing that I noticed was they just wanted somebody to listen. They just wanted somebody to hear them and not say anything else. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting someone to just listen to you. And if you don't have somebody in your life who's going to do that, there's nothing wrong with going and getting outside help. There's a lot of different communities that in which, you know, the concept of therapy isn't widely accepted. You know, I'm part of one of those communities. I'm part of the South Asian community, the Pakistani community, and the concept of therapy can be seen as really taboo in those places. But There's nothing wrong with wanting to talk to somebody and be able to work through your issues or work through what you've been through. It's so nice being able to have a third-party person who doesn't know anything else about your life, doesn't know anyone else in your life. They're just there to hear you out and to listen. And if you need that, there are so many resources out there, But on top of therapy, there's also so many things that you can do on your own. I know that journaling is one of the things that helped a lot of my friends, whether that's intentional journaling, so you kind of sit and you think about a topic and you write solely about that, or the concept of free journaling, where you kind of just let yourself go and write out everything that comes to mind, kind of just like word vomiting all over a page. And I think one of the best ways that I've seen, at least, I remember when I was in high school, I had an amazing English teacher. Her name was Miss Skiersky. She told me that the best way that she learned to cope with things that she was going through in her life was writing letters. She wrote letters to people who had hurt her, to people she had lost. And she never sent them out, obviously. But she told me that it was kind of a way for her to say what she needed to say without having to get anyone else involved. And although it may not have been the same type of situation, when I was in high school, I lost my great-grandfather, and I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't know what I was supposed to do to kind of get through it. He was in Pakistan, I was here in America. I didn't get to say goodbye to him. And she gave me that advice, and that night I sat down and I wrote him a letter, and it somehow made me feel better. And I've kept that going for a few years now, where anytime somebody hurts me or I'm going through something and someone else is involved, I just sit down and I write them a letter. Kind of like to all the boys I've loved before, now that I'm thinking about it, but not exactly, because they're not love letters. In fact, if I write you a letter, it's probably because you did something pretty screwed up. Not Nana. Sorry, Nana. But it helps being able to say the things that you want to say without really having to say them to the person sometimes. I think one of the biggest things that we need to focus on a lot more is also talking about the men in our lives who have been sexually assaulted, because it's not just a female issue. There are a lot of men who experience sexual assault and sexual abuse or domestic abuse in their lives, and that's not something that we should be able to just glide over. And I hate the fact that every time I've heard anyone mention, men who have been sexually assaulted, it's to shut up people who are talking about the women who are being sexually assaulted. It's always those guys who are like, oh, men get assaulted too. Like, you shouldn't use somebody else's abuse or somebody else's horrifying experience to shut down someone else's horrifying experience. It shouldn't be an excuse. If you want to talk about the men who have been sexually assaulted or the men that have been abused, that should be its own conversation. It shouldn't be an excuse that you use to shut down someone else's conversation. And for the guys out there who have had that experience, I am so sorry. It goes back to the same thing. Nobody has the right to make you feel that way. Nobody has the right to put their hands on you and make you feel uncomfortable. And nobody has the right to tell you that it takes away from your masculinity that somebody else was doing that to you. That's not what it means to be a man. Being a man doesn't mean that you don't have bad experiences or you don't feel trauma or you don't have to work through issues. That doesn't make you less of a man. Being a man is being able to talk about your issues and being able to understand what you're feeling and have the emotional maturity to know what you need, whether that be physical contact, whether that be, emotional contact with somebody or being able to speak to somebody. There's a lot of different things that can help in those situations. But I think the biggest one is just first being open to having the conversation with yourself before you have it with someone else. I don't know what it means to be ready to look yourself in the mirror and be able to accept when something like that has happened to you. I can't speak on that because I haven't had that experience, and I can't imagine what that must be like. But I hope if and when any of you get there or, are working to get there, I hope you know that there are people out there who are wanting to help you. Not willing, but wanting to. I think there's a big difference between being willing to help someone and wanting to help someone. And there are definitely people out there who are wanting to help. And if and when you're ready to, take that step and have that conversation, I hope you find somebody that you can trust. I hope you have someone in your life that is willing to listen to you, whether that be, a friend, a family member, a sibling, a teacher. There's a lot of really good people in this world. There may be a lot of bad people too, but there definitely is a lot of good people in this world. I know sometimes it's hard to be able to see the good in the world when there's so much bad surrounding us, but I think that makes us want to be better. The better you are, the more you help, the more people that you'll be able to show that change is possible. I think sometimes we forget that the mass groups that we look at or the big people that we look at on social media or on TV or the groups that are out protesting, they're all built up by singular people. Singular people just like me and you, who may have grown up the same way that we did, who may not have grown up the same way that we did. But it all starts with one person deciding to try and make a change or try and start a conversation or try and make someone's day a little bit better. I think that was one of the biggest things that I learned when I started working, as a young adult. I was working as a retail worker, and I learned that within the 5 to 7 minutes it takes to check someone out at like a register, you can learn so much about a person. And I remember I would take those moments and I would try my best to make that person's day better. And you would not believe the amount of people who stopped me and thanked me for being kind or told me the story that they're going through or the things that have happened in their lives and how they're dealing with them. And that's within a 5 to 7 minute interaction. And it made me feel like I was making a small change. And I'm not saying that you should help people out just so you can feel better. That's not the point. The point is helping people because you're helping people. There's a lot of different things that go along with the conversation of sexual abuse and sexual assault. And unfortunately, one of the saddest parts of that conversation is having to deal with the people who take advantage of the kindness of others when it comes to believing victims. And it sucks to say that there are people who decide to make false allegations or people who decide to accuse others for whatever sick reasons that they can dream up to try and ruin someone else's life. And it's again like one of those things that just doesn't make sense in my mind because I don't know why somebody would try and do that to someone else. I know that here in this country we have the concept of innocent until proven guilty. But I think when it comes to topics like sexual assault or abuse, oftentimes we kind of switch to the other side where it's guilty until proven innocent because it's something so serious and something that we want to focus on so hard now and focus on fixing. And I can understand why we feel that way. But I think it's really important for the people who have to deal with these situations in a court of law or on on like the law enforcement side of it, if you will, to kind of take everything with a grain of salt, which I know for people like us who are seeing it on the outside, who maybe are just hearing the allegations, it's hard for us to understand because we want to believe every survivor, every victim. And it sucks that sometimes we have to take a step back and wonder, is this the truth or is this a lie or what is going on here? And I just want to put it out there that if you are one of those sick people who has decided to make a false allegation against somebody, there's a lot that you probably need to unpack there. It's not okay to make allegations on anybody for anything that's false. But this is one of those things that can not only ruin someone's life, but it can ruin their life for the rest of their life, regardless of whether it comes out that it was a false allegation or not. This whole topic is such a can of worms sometimes. I don't know. There's a lot that you can say. There's a lot that needs to change when it comes to how we handle situations regarding sexual assault or how we handle situations regarding false allegations or how we handle situations regarding who may have been involved or the power struggle that may have been involved or, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to focus on the positive change that we can make, which is listening to survivors, helping spread awareness of resources. Again, we gave that number for the helpline if you need that. There's a lot of people who are working really hard to try and create change in the world so that we can hopefully create a world where this is no longer an issue. But until we get there, please continue the conversation. Please keep listening. Please keep learning. And again, I just want to put it out there for any of the victims of sexual assault or abuse who may be listening right now. We believe you. We hope you get the justice that you deserve. And I hope that one day you can see that the world is trying to get better. And I think that's worth something. Maybe not everything just yet, but it's definitely worth something. So I guess that's basically it for today's episode. I know we got a little bit dark and a little bit intense there, but like I said, if you're not a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, you're probably not learning. So I hope if you learned or took anything from this episode, it's to treat people with kindness and to love the people around you and to keep your boundaries, establish what you are okay with and what you're not okay with and stick to that. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Thank you again so much for listening, and we will see you next time at the next draft. But again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for keeping an open mind. And we will see you next time at the first draft.